Time now for 1 full hour of nitro-fueled NHRA talk. It's The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Now, your hosts, Marty Hough and 10-time NHRA winner Doug Herbert.
You're listening to The Straight Line on drag racing at mrn.com. Thanks for being here for our 1 hour of horsepower. Appreciate you joining us. We'll talk today to the 16-time Funny Car World Champion. John Force will be here. And as we prepare for the challenging conditions at Vandermeer Speedway in Colorado, we'll chat with veteran crewman Mike Green and John Medlen. The burnout is complete, and we are set to launch another edition of The Straight Line. Welcome in. It is a Wednesday afternoon on mrn.com. That means The Straight Line, along with 4-time IHRA Top Fuel Champion and 10-time NHRA National Event winner and Grand Marshal this weekend at Vandermeer Speedway for the Mopar Mile High Nationals. Doug Herbert is here. Have you figured out what a Grand Marshal does or is supposed to do?
No, I don't. I'm just going to show up there and hope that somebody at the NHRA tells me what to do, or somebody at Mopar. We've got hooked up with a bunch of great Mopar folks on Thursday night. We're going to be part of their block party in Golden. Which is a big, big fan festival they have in Golden, Colorado, down the street from the track. So that'll be fun. Dragging Mimi out there. She's not been to Denver. So some old Snap-on buddies of mine. We're going to hop on some Harleys and go motorcycle riding.
Oh, that's great.
Which Denver, the Denver area is an awesome place to ride motorcycles. So we'll probably go up to Mount Evans is like the highest road in North America or something. Which by the time you get to the top of it, the motorcycle will barely run.
No air up there.
15,000 feet or something. So we'll ride up there probably, and just some neat stuff to do out there. So we're gonna have some fun, and looking forward to being the Grand Marshal for NHRA and Mopar. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, and that the Mopar block party. Not only are there drivers and VIPs and all sorts of people that show up there, but it's a huge car show.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I haven't been there in years, but even back 10 years ago or so when I went there, it was a big deal. So looking forward to that. It's everybody in Denver, the Vandermeer family that runs the track there in Denver, in the Denver area, is much like the track in Norwalk and Englishtown is Knapp family, Norwalk's Bader family. So, a lot of these tracks are family-owned tracks, and they are good promoters. They promote their track. They're part of their community. And so a lot of neat stuff. You never know. We might end up with a brake school out there, so that might be a neat thing to do at Vandermeer. So we're, a lot of things going on, and looking forward to being out there in Denver. That'll be fun this week, and hopefully it'll be a little cooler. North Carolina, we're burning up here.
Man. Oh, yeah. One of the advantages, and we'll talk to the crew chiefs about this, is that at Vandermeer you have an underground cooling system that helps at least the launch pad and get the cars off the track.
Yeah, they did that a while back. I'm thinking it was like 2005 or 6, something like that. Actually cooling underneath I think it's about the first 100 and something feet of the racetrack, but it keeps the starting line from getting 140 degrees, so the cars aren't smoking the tires right when they hit the throttle. In Denver, it's a big deal. There's a lot of issues with having no air up there. There's, it's literally mile high. There's no air. The parachutes come out. There's no air to blossom the chutes. Cars go off the end of the track. There's a lot of things that you have to think about going to Denver and racing. I always had fun racing there. Raced Mike Dunn in the final round there in '93, and I think raced Joe Amato another time in the final. I never want to race at Denver, so I'm pissed. But so we'll have to go back to Denver, maybe again racing and try and win a race or at least do something up there.
Now, a week ago, I was here by myself here in the studios. You were in Southern California after some really cool brake schools at Pomona. And then just yesterday, the NHRA and the Automobile Club of Southern California announced an extension of their long-running partnership through 2020. The multi-tiered sponsorship package is a comprehensive program that touches many facets of NHRA business, including race entitlements and track sponsorships, incling
which is Pomona, Pomona Auto Club Raceway. That's where we have the brake school. So we had a great brake school, last week ago out there.
Yeah.
Awesome deal. We had the Los Angeles County Fire Department comes out there and actually use the jaws of life to do a extraction demonstration, which if nobody's ever seen one, it's incredible. These they did one day a K900 Kia, which is like their Mercedes
Yeah.
Rated Kia.
Top of the
It's
line.
a nice car.
Yeah.
Has laminated windows, so they went with a big axe to try and knock the window in, and I mean, it was like, wow, it was incredible. But they cut the top off, they jacked the dash off, and the chief for the fire department is commentating while the guys are working on the car, and he's saying, guys, this is real, because normally there's somebody in there. We've got an EMT on them, putting an IV in them, helping to keep them alive. They're screaming. Their legs are broken. Yeah. This is a serious deal, and it's very impactful.
Sure.
Super neat. So it really big thanks to the Los Angeles County Fire Department for doing that. Kia for donating the cars. The California Highway Patrol comes out. They speak to the parents and the teenagers about what to do when you get a blue light behind you, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We have big rig 18-wheeler trucks was KKW came out there. 3 18-wheeler trucks giving teenagers and parents drive around the truck, show them how trucks stop and how there's blind spots and just all the things that you don't learn in driver's ed. So we're trying to keep these kids from getting in accidents.
And one of the big reasons why you can do these schools at Pomona, because there's a lot of space that you guys need to be able to make those work, is like sponsorships from AAA.
Well, exactly. It's the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds. It's big, but that's also the home of Pomona Raceway. The first year that we went out there, AAA actually was a supporter, and then I don't know what happened. They do a driving school, and I think some marketing person over there is confused, thinking that we do a driver's ed class, which is not the case. But we'll get back with them. But the National Hot Rod Association has always been huge supporter of brakes and what we're doing. And the reason why Wally and C.J. Hart and these guys started National Hot Rod Association back in the 40s was to get kids off the road, get them, keep them from racing on the streets, get them into a safer environment, which that's what NHRA is. That's what it started out.
That's what they do.
So kind of what we do at Brakes kind of goes along with that.
Yeah, no question about that. So congratulations to the NHRA and AAA for extending that partnership through 2020. So they'll be there for a long time. Coming up on the program, we will talk to 16-time Funny Car World Champion John Force as he heads to Bandimere this weekend. Doing okay in points, about middle of the pack, I think 5th right now in points. Problem being right now is that both Robert Height and daughter Courtney Force are right now battling for just the few spots that are going to be available to get into the countdown. So we'll talk to the champ about that.
I'm looking at that top 10 in Funny Car, and I'll tell you what, that's a tough top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. You've got Courtney Force, which is not in the top 10. Chad Head, not in the top 10. Tony Pendergrass, past champion, not in the top 10. John Hale driving Big Jim Dunn's car. So,
correct.
I mean, there's, and that's a top 10. So there's several cars that are, really race-winning contenders that are not in the top 10. That doesn't happen all that often.
Yep. Looking at 5 different drivers: Cruz Pedregon, Tim Wilkerson, Robert Height, Alexis DeJoria, Courtney Force. 5 drivers within 4 rounds of each other, and a whole lot of racing.
Well, this
left
Western
to go.
Swing is going to, somebody is going to solidify themselves in the top 10 in the countdown, and there's going to be. I'm guessing it's going to go down to Indy, and we were talking about that. Indy, I did not realize they're going to 1.5 points this year.
Yep.
So 1.5 points, 50% bonus points at Indy. That's big. And you know what? That brings a little bit of luster back in Indy.
Sure.
To me. I mean, they always talk, oh, yeah, good Indy. You know what? What's the big deal? Who cares? I mean, it's not.
It all pays
Indy,
the same,
but it's
same points. Yeah. Whatever.
But
not
now,
anymore.
yeah, that's. I think that's pretty cool. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
and I'm excited that they did that.
Yeah, and so we'll be looking forward to Indianapolis coming up. But the Western Swing comes up first. We'll also talk to Mike Green, the crew chief for the U.S. Army Top Fuel Dragster, driven by Tony Schumacher, and what they're dealing with at Bandimere and trying to get a top fuel car down the track at a decent rate of speed. Up on the mountain at
Well, and
Bandimere.
it's tough. Like I was saying, the chutes don't work. Well, also, on a funny car, they don't get the downforce. On a top fuel dragster, you've got wings on there for downforce. They're not effective. So there's different ways. Different crew chiefs do different things. Some guys put way more wing in. Some guys put less wing in because they think the drag is more than the having the extra wing angle in there, the wing stalls, and there's all kinds of theories. But different guys do it different ways. And the funny thing is there's 100 different ways to do it that work. So there's no handbook on running a nitro engine or a nitro dragster or funny car.
And that's one of the reasons why when we go into that week of Bandimere that we make sure that we have a couple of crew chiefs on the show just to talk to them, pick their brain a little bit, and find out what they're doing, because like you said, everybody's got a little bit different strategy on how to do this, and it seems like there's 100 different ways of doing it, and all of them are probably have some relevance.
Yeah, it's amazing. The funniest one to me is I remember back in the 90s, Eddie Hill used to go there, and he didn't change anything. He changed nothing. He put a bunch of weight on the clutch. He said, hey, I'm just going to put a bunch of weight on the clutch. The engine's not going to rev up. It's not going to make any power. But with a bunch of weight on the clutch is going to engage more. We're going to burn the fuel that we're already using at a lower RPM. And then he won the race. And I was thinking, wow, that's totally different than the way anybody else did it.
Right.
And it worked. Would it work for anybody else? I'm not sure, but it worked for him.
Eddie Hill was one of the greats because he was an outside-of-the-box thinker, and that's one of the great things that made Eddie Hill Eddie Hill. We'll also talk to John Medlen. He's been at this a long time, and one of the guys that he does a great job of explaining things to laymen like me. We see him quite a bit on the ESPN specials when they go to him to explain a different part piece or something, or maybe a safety feature, which is one of his big deals on a car. They go to John Medlen, and he does a great job of explaining
Medlen's a neat
things.
guy. So with two great crew chiefs we've got on the show today, along with four. So looking forward to a really good show.
Coming up, we will talk to the crew chief of the U.S. Army Top Fuel Dragster. Mike Green will join us next.
This is The Straight Line. More right after this.
Enter O'Reilly Auto Parts $10,000 payment payoff sweepstakes powered by Castrol Edge, and you could win $10,000 toward paying off your vehicle. Plus, weekly winners will receive $500 Visa gift cards. Visit O'ReillySweeps.com for official rules. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends August 25th. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
NHRA drag racer Doug Herbert here to talk about safe driving. In early 2008, my two sons were killed in a car accident that was caused by speed and inexperience. After the accident, I learned that over 6,000 teenagers each year are killed in car accidents, so I formed a nonprofit organization called Brakes. Brakes stands for Be Responsible and Keep Everyone Safe. Please visit our website at putonthebrakes.org to learn more about responsible driving and what you can do to keep our roads safe.
It's The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Now here's Marty Hough and Doug Herbert.
Appreciate you being here this afternoon. It's MRN.com and The Straight Line, and joined now by the crew chief of the U.S. Army Top Fuel Dragster, Mike Green, joins us. Mike, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time.
Hey, Mike, can you hear us?
Well, you got John Medlen, but
Oh, hey!
I haven't heard from Mike Green. I either got two of us, or I'm going to be Mike Green.
Now you're going to be John Medlen. John, Doug Herbert, good to talk to you, buddy.
Appreciate that, man.
Hey, John, you've got a long history in the sport and been to Denver a lot of times and won a lot of races at Denver. Tell us a little bit about your success at Denver, what it takes differently at Denver than it does at some of the other places.
Well, I think you're being overly complimentary when you use the term success. But I've spent, roughly 40 years fooling with the cars and the engines and so on and so forth, and professionally drag racing since 1986. So I've been fortunate enough to see how the parts and pieces have evolved from making more horsepower to trying to keep the engines alive to, we'll just say, safety aspects of the chassis. Most particular lately, what we didn't realize was quality of material and control of the material processes. And so we've just been fortunate enough to be able to evolve along with the sport.
Well, John, you know, one thing that I always know about you is you're a super guy. And I know when in 2008, when my boys had an accident, the first one to come over and talk to me at Phoenix that day before I left was you, and I'll never forget that. You mean a lot to me.
Well, it's I guess it's a very fun, very complicated race car, but it's a very fun sport, and I think for the general public to understand a little bit more about what we deal with on an everyday race basis, it kind of adds a little adventure to the program.
You know, John, one of the things that you can be credited to, your son Eric has made a heck of a difference here in our sport, and with your help, everybody that drives a top fuel dragster or a funny car is safer with some of the things that you have done, that you've pushed for and pioneered in the safety and innovation with the NHRA cars.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, when you have one of your family members driving one of these things, and even before that, you find that the driver's comfort level, I mean, basically we're dealing with his office. I mean, you find that his comfort level has a great effect on his reaction time, his consistency in leaving the starting line, how he stages the car, all of the things that are so very important to win in a race. And you begin to understand that I need to help this guy all I can. And we start looking at the safety aspects of the car. We consider now that the funny cars are 275 miles an hour at half track. Dragsters are almost 300.
Wow.
And that's a considerable velocity. So you can't overprotect these guys, and you got to do all. I think it's just a innate responsibility of the crew chief to protect the driver all he can. And when you start looking at the sanctioning bodies, they do all they can, but they don't have as good understanding as the crew chiefs, and they'll invoke all manner of engineering and studies. But really, the crew chief and the crew, when they work on that car every single day, they see more, I think, a broader aspect of the safety challenges than anybody else can see.
John, as we head to Bandimere in Denver, and as you were just mentioning, the safety aspects of these cars, explain to our listeners why the parachutes and the brakes are very different and very important when we head to Bandimere this weekend.
Yeah, John Bandimere and the people there probably have one of the best prepared facilities in the whole tour. By nature of the fact, the way the finish line is, yes, there's a kind of a dead end there, but it's an uphill approach. And they've spent, I don't know how much money they spent on the geothermal cooling aspect of that racetrack, and that adds a degree of safety to the car because it keeps the tire cooler. When we reach, especially in Denver, you can see some very hot racetrack surfaces, especially towards the finish line when you get past the geothermal. And we see temperatures on the tires. We monitor the tire temperature consistently. And we see temperatures there that are higher than the temperature that the tire was vulcanized or made at. And so that's a very real concern. But we're fortunate enough in Denver to have a very well-prepared racetrack. And, of course, always in those type of situations, you pay especially attention to the brakes and the parachutes. They'll do a very good job when they're functioning correctly.
Hey, John, one of the things that I know you have done with a lot of the teams you've been with over the years is you've made a heck of a difference with making parts. You've always been a parts guy and making and engineering those parts. And, I know at Forces and also at Schumacher, going in there and determining what parts that you're buying that you can actually make better or have an advantage through that. Tell us a little bit about that and your innovation in that area as well.
Well, I think probably the biggest thing with manufacturing your own parts is either you're a crew chief that conceives an idea, creates a part, puts it on the race car and runs it, and many times it doesn't do exactly what you thought, or it doesn't produce the result that you thought. But each of those situations teaches you what to do next. Over the years, you talked about engine attrition and explosions, so on and so forth. So we put a pan pressure switch on there. That means that when the engine is about to expire, the pan pressure goes up, and it automatically deploys the chute, shuts off the ignition, and shuts off the fuel. That's a big safety aspect. And now at NHRA, of course, everyone is aware of the safety at the end of the track that actuate that system. But when you're talking about manufacturing the parts, you see the cause and effects of the parts that you do, and you begin to see that, well, in Denver, we need something a little different. And we base what we run this weekend in Denver on what we ran a year ago. And none of the races between a year ago at Denver and now apply to what you're going to do in Denver. So that gives you an advantage when you can make your parts. And eventually the parts that we make, they go down to the little guy. That information just has a way of propagating down to the little guy, and he eventually takes advantage of those things too.
Chatting with John Medlen with the Infinite Hero Funny Car, Don Schumacher Racing. John, tell us a little bit about preparing for the Western Swing. Obviously, this is not one of those races where you're throwing a couple of parts and pieces in the truck and taking off. You're going to be gone for a while.
Yeah, we're addressing that right now. Don has elected to expand his machine shop. I would venture a guess to say it'll double, and then there's another expansion scheduled later. But yeah, we've had a scheduling, we'll say, conference with the people in the machine shop and the crew chiefs to try to determine what we need to get far enough ahead on before we start moving those machines, because that'll make a significant impact on the parts that they're able to produce. And like right now, the connecting rod manufacturing runs 5 to 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and it can't quite keep up. So we're having to do a little burn the midnight oil, so to speak, to get some of these parts and pieces up to production.
Wow. Well, John, again, I appreciate what you do and appreciate you coming over and talking to me. We're in a kind of in a club that neither one of us chose to be in with our kids, and I always admired you and appreciate you for coming over and talking to me and being there and being a friend.
Well, again, everybody needs to know. Feel free to come by any of the DSR trailers and the camps, and please feel free to come by and talk to me. I'd be happy to explain anything, to show anything to anyone. It's actually a few privilege in life to be able to do something that you love to do and actually get paid to do it.
Yeah. John, real quick before we let you go, and Doug has talked about this on quite a few occasions, the process of getting once the race is over at Denver, getting the car back to normal when you go to Sonoma.
Yeah. Well, I think even in drag racing, there's an old adage that record keeping will save you. And that is so very true, because what we have when you go from one place to another, even on sea level, or we'll say halfway to the big mountain, Denver, those kind of things, you have to adapt to the environment. But your mindset of what you're going to do for the next race begins weeks before you go there. So our preparation for Denver has been a 5 days a week, 8 hours a day preparation just for that one race.
Yeah.
Then we have to unravel everything and head to Sonoma and Seattle. So there is a definite, you got to go to the book and look at what you did and make sure that you erase Denver and get back to sea level.
Well, John, thanks for joining us today. John Medlen, crew chief for Don Schumacher Racing and the Infinite Hero Car with Jack Beckman. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. And I'll come by and see you at Denver.
Yeah, please do. I'll be looking for you.
All right, buddy.
John Medlen is, like he said, he's been at this thing a long time, and partners with Jimmy Prock on that Infinite Hero Car, and you know that there was a reason why they went and got both of those guys from John Force Racing and put them on Jack Beckman's car, because they've worked together.
Well, they got
and they
chemistry.
know.
Yeah, they got chemistry, and Jimmy is more of a car guy, trying things on the car. John is more of a make things up.
Right.
So they're a pretty good complement to each other.
Yeah.
And when they change as much as those two guys tend to change, there's a lot of figuring out, which is a disadvantage sometimes and an advantage sometimes. And my guess is they're trying things out now, because when it comes time for the countdown, they're going to be pretty tough. I'm guessing they're working on something. I've known both of those guys long enough to know they're working on something, and it's probably going to be pretty successful when they hit it.
And right now, Jack Beckman, third in points, so no real issues about trying to get into the countdown. They're winning races, and so at this point, by the time they get to Indianapolis, they can try some things Make sure that they know what's working, what's not working, probably more important, what's not working, and have it all cranked up, ready to go by the time they hit Indianapolis in the U.S. Nationals.
Well, and as Medlen was saying, they make so many of their own parts there that they've got things to try, so you can try things. They don't work, they do work, whatever. But you can also find out, maybe put some parts aside. Okay, well, hang on. These clutch discs are going to work good in these particular conditions.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit to Mike Green about that. He knows a whole lot about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk to him about the parts and pieces coming out of Don Schumacher Racing, because I'm sure that he's keeping close count as we speak. When we return, we'll talk to the crew chief of the U.S. Army Top Fuel dragster. Mike Green joins us next.
You're listening to The Straight Line. More right after this.
The following is a message from ToyotaRacing.com. Toyota Racing is all about speed and precision, including this ad and our official site, ToyotaRacing.com, where you can find exclusive NASCAR content and videos, series information for our NHRA, Off-Road, Toyota Pro, USAC, and motocross teams. Way too many details about all of our drivers, including Denny Hamlin and Matt Kenseth. Complete race results, a constant reminder that you'd rather be watching NASCAR right now. Cool as heck Toyota Racing t-shirts and keychains. Twitter updates, a way to connect with other race fans. Tons of photos of Toyota drivers and their crews in the winner's circle. What can I say? We like to win. Links to other Toyota websites, obviously. In-depth articles, and most importantly, a site to visit when you're pretending to be working but actually are daydreaming about the smell of burnt rubber. Come on, admit it, that's probably what you use it most for anyway, and we're happy with that, just as long as you keep cheering for Team Toyota. If you have any other questions, believe it or not, there's also a section for that at ToyotaRacing.com. Whew, I'm dizzy. NASCAR is a registered trademark of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, Inc.
You're listening to The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts with Marty Hough and Doug Herbert.
Join the Straight Line conversation on social media, and there's lots of ways of doing so. Via Twitter at MRN Radio, at Doug Herbert, and at Straight Line MRN. You can also search and like on Facebook, Motor Racing Network, the Doug Herbert fan page, and Breaks with Doug Herbert. And joining us now on the telephone line is the crew chief for the U.S. Army Top Fuel dragster, Mike Green, joins us. Mike, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. How you doing, guys?
Hey, Mike, doing good, man. You've been doing this for an awful long time, and going to Denver, I know you've had some success there. What's some of the obviously you can't tell us all your secrets, but tell us a couple of your secrets for what you do going there and keeping track of what you're doing, so that every year when you go there, you're one of the guys at the top of the heap.
Yeah, it's a challenge to run a fuel car up there for sure. The main thing we change physically in the engine is the compression ratio. We raise it to way above normal levels to try to make up for the barometric pressure difference there compared to any other track we race at. But we change the ignition timing. We change things in our superchargers. There's a few things that are maybe proprietary, but the main thing is raise the compression about as high as we can raise it.
Mike, how much do you confer with the other crew chiefs in the pits from Don Schumacher Racing at Denver specifically? Doug mentioned it in the open, and I think you kind of pointed at it, that everybody has a different comfort level in what they're changing for Bandimere. And so are you talking more or less to the other crew chiefs in your pit area?
I think in our 7 teams, we try to keep a good open communication between all our teams. And, especially going to Denver, we all kind of go over last year what, because the teams do different things, and go over what was successful, what wasn't. So we make sure everybody's on the same page when we head that direction for sure.
Hey, Mike, we were just talking to John Medlen a little bit about making the parts and all that, and I know you've always been, involved in that when you worked for me back in the early 90s, and I got to tell you, you really were one of the reasons kind of kept me going in Top Fuel racing and really motivated me and really, had me turned around to where I could run good. So I got to credit you for a lot with some of the success that I had in racing over the years. But tell us a little bit about your you're getting in there and helping on some of these parts, because obviously crew chief's input is very important on making parts.
Oh, I appreciate that. You were definitely somebody that gave me a chance to be a crew chief for a little while for you, and helped me along my career path, as it were. But yeah, we make a lot of parts here at our shop, and myself, Todd, Okahara, John, the crew chiefs, we're kind of tasked with sharing the responsibility of keeping the shop, the fab shop, and the machine shop kind of headed in the right direction, and building all the parts and pieces and race cars that TSR needs to try to win another championship in Top Fuel and Funny Car in 2015. Defending championships is never easy, so our shop stays really busy. We have 20 people here that don't go to the races, that stay here building. Like John said, I think it's up near 300 different parts we build in our machine shop just specifically for our race cars. So yeah, it's a big task, and we also got to keep it headed in the right direction.
Yeah, you were saying that the machine shop that's making the connecting rods is working a little bit of overtime to try to get as many for the Western Swing as possible. He kind of mentioned that. Give us your perspective of trying to get as many pieces and parts and the right ones set for the Western Swing, because this isn't a situation where you're going back and forth. Once your trucks get out there, they're not coming back for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely a little challenging, for us, because, we have to take enough parts for 3 races in a row. And then, even some teams will go right to Brainerd, Minnesota, and not bring their cars back to the shop. So actually 4 races in a row. But the first one, almost everybody will have a different rod length in their engine. So yeah, for them to, we started spooling up for this a couple months ago, so everybody could have the right rod length for Denver, and then switch it all back over to a sea-level combination for 3 more races. So it keeps them on their toes this time of year. But we build a great connecting rod, and now we sell them to a few different teams. So it's a really good product, and that's the basis of us building our own parts, is that we think maybe we can build it better than anything we can buy. So it's a great advantage for DSR.
Mike, tell us about what's some of your highlights of racing at Denver and that Western Swing over the years with different teams that you've been with and ran?
I've had some success, not as much lately. I don't know why. It seems like our car runs really good, but we haven't put it in the winner circle very often. But certainly winning the Western Swing with Corey in the McDonald's dragster. We had a really good running car there, and we battled for a few years with Alan Johnson and Gary Selby for the championship, and just a great time. We'd go out there, and for a couple of years we ran really, really good and won a bunch of races, and winning all 3 of those. I think Antron did it last. It's pretty gratifying to go out there and win Denver, and then go to Sonoma or Seattle and win that race. With all the changes you have to make. So I think that would be the thing I most remember.
Mike, a couple of years ago, you've kind of quote bit the bullet and went to the 6-disc clutch when a lot of guys were not doing that. A year that probably wasn't as prosperous for that particular year, but you've come back and now over the last couple and really been kind of the masters of that. Take me through that process and how that clutch works, or if it works any better at Bandimere than some of the other places.
Yeah, I mean, we don't run it a lot different on the mountain per se, but the 5-disc to 6-disc clutch, there's definitely what I would consider a pretty huge advantage in running it. I think that we had it's gone from 4-disc to 5-disc and 5-disc to 6-disc, and at some point we probably have 7 in there if they would let us, but they won't. So but it it just makes the clutch run cooler, so the actual disc material themselves stays cooler and then is more controllable. Once it gets past a certain heat, it starts doing stuff on its own that we're not actually in control of. So having another disc and floater in there dissipates more heat, keeps the clutch cooler, and allows us to stay more in control of the clutch the entire way down the course.
Mike, what would some of the next step be in clutch technology? I know years ago you were talking about having wet clutches and stuff like that. Have you ever thought about what the next steps are?
We have, and we do here, like having 7 crew chiefs, and we have crew chief meetings, after not every race we can get together, when they're not back to back. But so we have lots of ideas, and that's been one of them, and certainly carbon clutches have been discussed. We've done a lot of research in that. Everything that we do that way, the biggest, one of the main things we have to look at is will NHRA actually allow us to run it if we spend the money and time to develop it? And lately, that answer has been no. They think it's really competitive. It's a great time in our sport, Top Fuel and Funny Car, that it's some of the best racing we've seen in years and years. So they have a tendency to try to keep it that way. And also, we have to always watch our speed. So they spend a lot of time making sure that whatever we do develop is, more safety than performance.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the other things? You guys were really one of the first to go to the modern capsule canopy deal. Is NHRA letting you guys do any more stuff on the way of streamlining on the cars, or they kind of put the kibosh on that?
Yeah, no, they when we developed the canopy initially, there was a lot of people who thought that we developed it for aerodynamics, and that absolutely was not the reason. And we actually did no testing, no FEA work on it, as far as aero-wise. We built it specifically to make us safer dragster for Tony. And, it was a lot of, years in designing it and testing it, because it added quite a bit of weight to the race car. But no, it was specifically designed for safety. And did it increase the aero a little bit? A little. But, right behind that is this big nitro-burning Top Fuel engine. So,
yeah.
Aerodynamics is a lot about, frontal area, and it really didn't change that. But when we went to try to get it to run it, it took us about 6 months to get it approved, and some FEA wind tunneling and stuff to try to convince everybody it wasn't an aerodynamic advantage. And I think a lot of people weren't ever convinced of it, but we had to pay for it. NHRA decided we had to do it, and DSR ended up having to pay for it. But it got on the track what we think is the safest Top Fuel car out there. So in the end, we think it was a good thing, and we started to learn how to run it because it definitely added weight, 30 pounds to the center of our car, which changed the way the car worked. But we thought it was worth doing, and that we've had to work harder to make sure the performance stayed and then, improved as we went.
Yep. Well, Mike Green, thanks for joining us. Mike Green, we're talking to you from Don Schumacher Racing, Army dragster driven by Tony Schumacher. Good to talk to you, and hopefully come by and see you at Denver.
Absolutely, guys. Appreciate it.
Mike Green, the crew chief of the U.S. Army Top Fuel dragster. Now, yesterday we had the opportunity to catch up with 16-time Funny Car World Champion John Force, and that conversation comes up next.
This is The Straight Line. More right after this.
The road to victory lane isn't just for drivers anymore. Introducing the official daily fantasy game of NASCAR at DraftKings.com, America's favorite daily fantasy sports site. Just pick a team of 5 drivers and stay under the salary cap. Outscore your opponents and win. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code COAST to play for free. You could win part of the $1 billion in prizes being awarded this year. Enter COAST to play for free now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
Chet Herbert designed and manufactured the first roller cam for racing in 1949. Today, NHRA drag racer Doug Herbert continues his father's legacy. Herbert Cam stocks cams for virtually all racing applications, from street ride to NASCAR and NHRA. Herbert Cams can also custom grind a cam for any application. Cams, lifters, valve springs, push rods, and all related performance valve train and engine parts in stock at the best prices. Visit HerbertCams.com or call our expert technicians at 800-444-7373 for all your racing needs. Herbert Cams.
You're listening to The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts with Marty Hough and Doug Herbert.
Welcome back. It is The Straight Line on a Wednesday afternoon here on MRN.com. Along with Doug Herbert, I'm Marty Hough, and joined right now by the driver of the Peak Chevrolet Camaro, 16-time world champion John Force joins us. Champ, thanks for being here. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. I love being on your show. Love spreading the gospel about NHRA. We're heading to Denver. Pretty exciting time.
Forrest, you were on a roll last week, and you whole shot win first round, and you had an incredible light second round. You're hungry to win. I mean, you're not playing out there right now.
Well, that's what they pay us for, and I ain't getting no younger. I got a job to do racing all these young kids. Now the ladies have joined into the fight. Of course, they have for years. Shirley, set the stage for women to come into the sport, along with a lot of others. But, yeah, you can't take anybody for granted. That girl over there, DeJoria, great kid. I love her dad. And they're with Coletta, and it's a great team. And, you can't cut them no slack. And, hey, I had a little bit of luck, shoved my old hot rod in deep. Didn't really leave on nobody, but got the win, so I'll take it.
Well, anytime you get the win, that's a good thing. Tell us about Denver this weekend going up there. It's a different thing. You got Mike Neff and a pretty stacked bench over at John Force Racing. Give us a report card so far this year and what you're looking to do before Indy.
Well, the story hasn't changed. We had a lot of issues, financial, that changed the way John Force Racing does business, but we recovered on that. No excuse. We got our money back. May never be the way we used to be financially, but we got enough money to take these three funny car Chevrolets and a top fuel car with that monster logo. We're growing with that group. We're pretty excited with Brittany in the seat of that car. Her car is doing well this year with Todd Smith and Ronnie Thompson. So we got our work cut out for us. Mike Neff probably dumped the overload on him where, he's, for me, the next Austin Coyle. And he's trained these kids like John Schaefer that runs my car and working with Ron Douglas and Daniel Hood, all these guys. We got some good hot rods. Not where we want to be, not winning like we did last year. The Schumacher group, they're dominating out there. But like I always said, you got to watch out for that Petragon and Cruz and now Wilkerson. These guys out there running in the threes, pretty impressive.
Force, what are some of the challenges? You've talked a lot to us about you having new guys, young guys coming up, and going to a tricky place like Denver. It's not like anywhere else you race. What are some of the challenges that imposes for your team?
Well, we know Denver, we've raced there enough, even though we have some changes in our combination that we're starting to evolve. You know what I'm saying? You've got to grow. NHRA's put rules and regulations on things that we can't do to make these cars go faster. But drag racers, that's what we do. And my people are continually looking at that like anybody else. And naturally, we want to build safety. But we've got a lot of changes, and we're basically our biggest problem is teaching young teams. John Schaefer was back up to Mike Neff, so Neff's got a new guy that came in with him that they're learning how to work together. I've got a whole new team. Hell, we got to fight just to make the rounds, but they're real good. A bunch of young kids, they love me, and John Schaefer's doing a great job. But right now, my cars are fighting just to make the top 10. So we got a lot of work cut out for us, but Denver's going to be tricky because it's high altitude. There's not any air up there. It's going to be tough. But, hell, I was the first guy to ever run 300 on the mountain, and that was in a funny car, and I did that, not taking anything away from the dragsters or Top Fuel, but we were the first car ever to run 300. So we got the data. We'll see what happens.
Well, Forrest, I don't think there's any doubt you're going to have that together. Tell us all what you think about what's going on at NHRA. New TV package coming up. Peter Clifford coming in at the new helm of NHRA. What's the deal? What do you think?
I think sometimes change is good. You got to look back. You got to look at the big picture. I said this in an interview the other day with Costello. You've got to look at Wally Parks brought this thing from nothing, from airports and little drag strips around the country. Dallas Gardner took it over. You know, they were bankers that came in from Ontario Motor Speedway. You know, they grew it. Then Tom Compton came in. You got to give credit. You know, losing the Winston deal, bringing Coke in, getting ESPN. And I want to thank ESPN. They've done a great job. And we've got 6 months to go in the countdown. And we count on these people. They're very talented. There's a lot of talent over there. I hope some of it comes over with NHRA. I know a lot of them are hired in guns over there, but they know our sport. And I think change is good. And then now with Peter Clifford taking over, I've already seen movement. You know, they brought in Blunt that's going to run the media side, which I think is very good. Nobody knows it or loves it better than him. And then on top of it, moving to Fox. Like I said, ESPN is great. Fox is great. For some reason, there was something missing. Not the show, not the quality of the show, but the time slot. That was the biggest problem. And people want live TV. There's only one way to experience. Either stand on a starting line and watch it or watch it live. You know, I don't like tape delayed. I just don't like it. Half the time, the word leaks out with the internet today, and you already know who won. So why do you want to watch it? You can't build your fan base. I think it's going to be great. Peter Clifford, a soft-spoken guy, but nobody knows it better than him. He's been in there all these years. You know what I mean? He's a financial guy, but he knows the sport. And proof's in the pudding, but I believe in him. I'm going to support him. And I've noticed that Pro and everybody out there, everything's been positive.
Forrest, how important is it for you when you're out there in front of corporate America to have that TV package the way you want it? Because that's a big part of your pitch when you're selling to corporate America and company XYZ that you're on live TV.
I believe that I can say, I know because I've been in the boardroom for the last year and a half, and it's been tough. Cutting deals like I've never cut before. But I sat in a boardroom once, and when I was walking out the door, I turned to the president. I said, hey, pick us up Saturday night. Nothing better than that nighttime qualifying, header fire, 10,000 horsepower, cars side by side. I was all excited. And the next day I get a call, and I was very surprised. He said, man, I tried to watch it, but I couldn't find it. Well, that meeting was over. Yeah. My whole selling point is what we do to pitch their. It ain't just you can put them in the stands. You can educate them that way. You can teach the young, you know, the up and coming fan. You can put it in the newspaper. That's great. You can put it on Twitter. You can put it out there in all the ways that my kids do it. But nothing is better, like I said, seeing it in person. But next to that is seeing it on TV. And for whatever reason, and I don't know why, and I don't blame anybody, don't have time to blame anybody. All I know is they couldn't find it. And that deal, that negotiation was over.
Wow.
You know what I mean? You go in there and you pitch somebody and you tell them how great it is and watch it here. And something went wrong. It's part of the business. It happens all the time. But I started hearing it everywhere I go. Can we talk about the TV package? And, man, it was not strong. As good as the quality of the show that those guys put together, and I love it. I always watch it. As great as the show was, it was a time slot. And I don't know who to blame for that. You know what I mean? Wasn't me. I didn't have anything to do with it. But now it's going to be fixed because it's going to come on live. They're talking about possibly doing some morning shows. Nothing done yet. Nothing set in stone. But they're talking about things they want to do. Hell, I've offered my studio here. It holds up to 80 people. If NHRA, I've talked to Peter about it. It's here. If you want to film here, do a show, bring in your stars from NHRA, do whatever it takes to grow the sport. I got a big investment, as does Coletta, as does Schumacher, as does everybody. And I'm going to give it every opportunity to try to grow it. And I think right now change is good. And I think you're going to see a lot more coming out of NHRA because it's time. It's time for change. Okay?
Yep, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Forrest. And you know what? You're a real-life hero. You're my hero. You're my boy's hero. You know that. The driver of that Chevy funny car with Peak. We appreciate you. Mimi and I are going to be in Denver this week, and we're going to come by and say hi to you.
come on by. It's really great. It's a beautiful facility on the side of the mountain. My dad, God bless him, he's gone, but he stood on that mountain with John Bannermere's dad and talked about their two crazy kids. Bannermere was starting to run the track, and I was just coming up as a racer, and the dream that we had. And nothing should ever be forgotten. We've got to grow this sport. It's a great product. America was built. The automobile was a way of life to the families, and we've got a great product. NASCAR's great. IndyCar is great. If you haven't noticed, my future son-in-law, if he can get her to the altar, Graham Rahal, he's moved up to second in the points against that powerhouse Penske and of course Ganassi, and they're chasing those Chevrolets. And I'm a Chevrolet guy, but he's chasing them, with those Hondas. But it's great. But drag racing, anybody can be a drag racer. Get your car, get a helmet, drag it out to the local strip, and you're a drag racer. You can do the same thing that I do, stage on a Christmas tree and go down that racetrack. And that's what's great about our sport. It won't fail, but it's got a chance, an opportunity in a tough economy that I believe is starting to recover, and we can grow this sport where it needs to be, where it deserves to be. And if everybody does their job, the fans to come out and watch and believe in us, NHRA, Fox, naturally the pro organization, the racers, but not just the pros, the grassroots, everybody from every walk of life that owns a race car, because these families out there, and we are a family sport, they love it, and we can't be forgotten. I just won't allow Eric Medlen to be forgotten if this sport faded, or your boys, everybody that matters to me. What really matters in life is how we got here, who we are, and where we're going in the future. And I'm really excited about this. I got something to sell. And, buddy, I need to keep selling to put this old ship, keep it afloat.
I'm just thinking about your dad up there on the mountain having a crazy kid. But you got Louie, too. You got another crazy kid, too. I think Louie even went race with my dad, Lefty Muttersbach or something back in 1900-something.
My brother Louie, half the stuff that I say I got from Louie. He's the funniest guy in the world. He's in Florida. He's retired now. He's having a life. But his days with his wheel stander, them big old Kenworth trucks that he created, he had so much fun, and I had fun with him. I love him to death, and he roots for me, calls me, get out there and fight that Schumacher and get those Cruz Petragon. He's still in the battle with me. But, life's good. My kids are racing, my grandkids. Autumn's got a junior dragster. Robert Height, I've got sponsors with him, signed a 5-year deal with Auto Club. Monster came on board with us. Of course, I got Peak, and I got Lucas. These are family companies, Old World Industries, and, of course, Lucas. His family gives everything, not only to NHRA, but to motorsports in general. They love it. And I'm just excited. Traxxas, you know what I'm saying? The list. I'm doing a big show. Me and Brittany heads for Detroit in the morning to do the big NACE show up there for PPG. So to honor some graduates up there, we're pretty excited about it. And life's good with John Force. I got my fights. I got to get my head out of wherever my head ends up. Sometimes I get stupid about things that really don't matter and focus on why we come to entertain the fans and to win championships. And nobody knows how to do that better than me. I consider John Force Racing. Right now we're struggling, but sometimes, just like a football team, you get down and you're changing personnel and you struggle. And we've never lost more than 2 championships in 25 years, never lost more than 2 in a row. Well, we lost last year. And so now, we've got to step up and get back to winning. I told Don Schumacher, I'll be ready by the countdown. Ain't saying I'm going to win, but I'm going to give him a fight.
Well, Forrest, I got some faith in you. You're our hero. You're my hero. So we appreciate it, and we'll see you in Denver this week. And good luck out there. Put that Chevy in the winner's circle, buddy.
Come on and see me. God bless you.
16-time world champion John Force joining us on Straight Line. More after this.
You're listening to The Straight Line. More right after this.
When your AC stops blowing cold air, find relief during O'Reilly Auto Parts Murray AC Month. While you may need to eventually service your AC, get immediate relief with Interdynamics R134A refrigerant with leak sealer. Buy 2, get 1 free at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limit supply. See store for details.
O'Reilly. Auto Parts.
NHRA drag racer Doug Herbert here to talk about safe driving. In early 2008, my 2 sons were killed in a car accident that was caused by speed and inexperience. After the accident, I learned that over 6,000 teenagers each year are killed in car accidents, so I formed a nonprofit organization called Brakes. Brakes stands for Be Responsible and Keep Everyone Safe. Please visit our website at putonthebrakes.org to learn more about responsible driving and what you can do to keep our roads safe.
It's The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Here's more with Marty Hough and Doug Herbert.
If you can't catch The Straight Line live on Wednesdays, you can always download the show and listen on demand. There's lots of ways of doing so at the Media Center at mrn.com. You can find it on iTunes or Stitcher. Big thanks to the people at iHeartRadio and the iHeartRadio app or the MRN app, or you can catch it later this afternoon on YouTube, and we will copy out the link a little bit later on this afternoon on social media, so be looking for that. So, yeah, if you can't...
That's a lot of options for us there.
If you can't find this show, then if you have issues. But Old Force was fired up. He's ready to go to Vandermeer and stick that thing in the winner's
Force,
circle.
it's easy to tell when he's fired up. All you got to do is look at the sheets from the race and look at his reaction times and see how fired up he is. Force gets in the car and he drives the car how he wants. And, crew chief will tell him, you rolled it in there deep, you this, that. Force doesn't care.
No.
I mean, let me drive the car, you do your job, and let me do my job. And I love Force. I think that's the way it needs to be done. I mean,
Sure.
you're going to drive the car just like John Medlen was saying. The guy in the car has to be comfortable. Well, that also means he needs to drive the car how it's comfortable. And you got to keep in mind. I mean, there's lane choice and eliminations, and you want to keep that in mind. And every once in a while you need to throw it, something out there and run low ET of eliminations, whatever. But you know what? The most important thing to me is always turning on the wind light.
Amen.
Turning on the wind light is what's most important. Whether it means rolling in a little deep, being comfortable, how you stage the car.
Getting in somebody's head.
Getting in somebody's head, exactly. So there's a lot, there's only so much that you can do to give you an advantage to win a race, and nobody's better at that than John Force, I can tell you.
Yep, and you'll have a front row seat at Vandermeer this weekend for the Mile High Mopar Nationals as the Grand Marshal. That's going to be cool.
That'll be fun. It makes me feel old, though. Grand Marshal, it's like, I thought that was when you're like 80 or something, but
no,
maybe not.
Heck no.
So, yeah, looking forward to going out there and seeing everybody at Denver. The weather's, I'm sure, going to be awesome. Like I said, some of my old Snap-on buddies are going to get some Harleys together. We're going to go Harley riding. So throw Mimi on the back of the Harley, and off we go to the top of Mount Evans.
Yeah, that is going to be cool. And one of the really, really cool places in motorsports in general, not just drag racing, but IndyCar, NASCAR, whatever, to see that that drag strip cut basically right in the middle of the side of a mountain is just awesome.
It really is. It's the closest place that I can relate to for our East Coast fans would be Bristol.
Yeah.
It's similar to Bristol, but you're in Denver. We're in Bristol. There's little trees around. In Denver, there's big trees, really big trees. So
exactly.
A lot of fun. Great place to go if you want a place you don't want to miss on your bucket list.
Want to thank everybody involved in the show today. So for everybody involved, we will see you next week right here on The Straight Line.
You've been listening to The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Tune in next Wednesday at noon for more NHRA talk. The Straight Line is also available on demand in the MRN.com Media Center or download from iTunes or Stitcher. The Straight Line is a production of the Motor Racing Network. All rights reserved.